All praise, all glory, all honor, most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Peace to you in the name of Jesus. This is your brother Elisha Israel of the household of faith, and I count it truly a blessing each and every time that I can come before you to preach the word of God. Never do I count it as a light thing to do so. Just a little bit about the household of faith. We meet every Sabbath at Indiana University Northwest Library Conference Center, room LC 105, 3400 Broadway, Gary, Indiana. We invite you to come out and worship with us where you can hear the uncut, unadulterated word of God. All right. And with that, I want to get right into today's lesson. And the title is Gender Roles in the Bible. This is the second part. I want to deal specifically with men, because everybody has a role to play. And it seems that we as a people have forgotten that. The importance of gender roles. You look at society, and our people in particular, we look at society and gender seems to be fluid. It's no more is the norm that men have specific things that they do and women have things that they do. Okay, but the Bible is clear about roles. Okay, we have to ask ourselves the question, do we want to be modern or do we want to be righteous and do things in order? Okay, this doesn't mean you abuse women, it doesn't mean anything like that, but it's clear that there is an order when it comes to the word of God. All right, so I want to start off in Ephesians 5, and I want to pick it up in verse 25. And I want to pick it up and show you just, we should know this, but it's good to reiterate it, who the head of the household is, okay? And when you say the head, a lot of times, brothers, because it's the man is the head, we'll find. But a lot of times brothers will hear that and they don't really understand what that entails. What that entails is responsibility and sacrifice and love. That's what it entails. So this is Ephesians 5 and verse 25. It reads, husbands, love your wives even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Okay, so you know, you often hear brothers again specify women be obedient to your wives, be obedient to your husbands, but a man is supposed to love his wife like Christ loved the church. Now, what did Christ do for his church? He sacrificed his life for his church. Let's go to 1 John 3. 1 John 3. See, when you really understand, if you understand that relationship is like one between Christ and his bride, or Christ and the church, you'll see that you have a great responsibility. And it says, and it see the type of love that John puts it in a different way. He says here, hereby, let's see here. It says, hereby perceive we the love of God because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. So when you really think about what he did, laying down his life, he laid down his life. So a man, again, is supposed to sacrifice for his wife and his family as a whole. Okay, let's go to 1 Timothy. Let's go to 1 Timothy 5. Because we'll find out here what the man is supposed to, or he has to do. Men have a responsibility to their families. You got a lot of people call themselves brothers. Well, people, I say that, call themselves Israelites, and they dogging women. Right? The woman ain't this, the woman ain't that. She ain't no good. Look, you need, again, we are reflections of each other. You need to look at yourself. I'm saying collectively, men need to look at themselves and see how they have failed women. See, women out here wrong and out of pocket because men are not there. So when you think about that, who are you to tell somebody about their faults without looking at your own? You can't look at the failures of women in a vacuum and not talk about the absence of men. See, you can't look at the spiritual breakdown of us as a people and not look at men specifically. Because we are the spiritual heads of the household. Right? We are the ones who are supposed to be the foundation of a household. If you think about that, Christ is the foundational stone, right? He is that rock. A man is supposed to be the one that the wife and the husband depend on. 1 Timothy 5 and verse 8. 1 Timothy 5 and verse 8. It says, but if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. So we see that the man is the head, right? And see, as they say, you got to pay the cost to be the boss. The man is supposed to provide for his household. And he says, if you don't provide for your household, you have denied the faith and you are worse than an infidel, or an infidel is a non-believer, right? So how could you talk about God and serving God if you're not putting food on the table? That's your role. That's part of your role. So you are the head, right? And you are to provide. And we see in our communities when you don't have the foundation there, just like if you don't have a foundation at a house, what's going to happen to that house? It's going to fall. It's going to fall. The house is not going to be stable. So it is when the man is gone. So it says, but if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. All right. Let's go to let's see for a second. Let's see where we want to go. Let's go. Let's see something else, because the man is the foundation there. He's supposed to love his wife, and let's see how he's supposed to deal with his children. Let's go to Proverbs, and we're going to pick it up at Proverbs, the 22nd chapter. Proverbs, the 22nd chapter, and we'll pick it up at verse 6. It says something about a child. But in saying this, we're going to find out, if we look at some other places, we'll see how this building up of a child is supposed to take place. In particular. So it says in verse 6 of Proverbs 22, it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. A man is supposed to do what? Train up the child. You're supposed to teach the child. All right. That's what a man is supposed to do. Let's go to Deuteronomy. This is in the responsibility of a man. I'm not saying that a woman can't teach a child. I'm not saying a woman can't. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the spiritual head of a house is the man. That is his responsibility. Let's go to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, the 6th chapter, and see something here that we find in the Torah, or the instruction of God. This is Deuteronomy 6 and verse 1. Deuteronomy 6 and verse 1. It says, now these are the commandments, the statutes and the judgments which the Lord your God commanded to teach you, that ye may do them in the land whither ye go to possess it. So now he's talking about the commandments, the statutes, the judgments. He said, these are the things you need to keep. He said that thou mightest fear the Lord thy God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command thee this day. Which I command thee. He says, thou and thy son and thy son's son, all the days of thy life, and that thy days may be prolonged. Okay, so what does he say here? He says basically you need to teach them to your sons, and they teach them to their sons. Okay, pass it down from generation to generation to generation. See, this wasn't put on the mothers to do, because the man is their head, right? The head of the man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man. So it says here, therefore, Israel, observe to do it, that it may be well with thee, and that ye may increase mightily, as the Lord God of thy fathers hath promised thee, in the land that floweth with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And because we don't understand the love of God, right? We don't understand a proper relationship with God, because our households are destroyed, because the foundation is absent in one way or another. he's not fulfilling his job. If he's not there providing, a lot of times if you see him, he's not there providing for his household, or if he is there providing for his household, he is not the spiritual head of that house. He might be providing and not be leading the family in the way in which they should go. Men should not depend on their women to lead the household. Women can manage a household, but the man is the spiritual leader of that household. That's just what it is. That's the order of things. I know that sounds archaic, that may sound sexist, but it is what it is according to the Bible. So it says in verse 6, and these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. So you have to teach them to your children. But we read, pass it down from son to son to son, perpetually through the generations. Now, why is that? So ultimately, you see the family intact. You see people knowing how to serve God, and ultimately you have a nation doing that. But what do we have as a people? We don't even keep the law. We don't understand that the law of God is supposed to be passed down from generation. You're supposed to teach the sons from generation to generation to generation, so that when they would leave their mother and father house and cleave unto their wife and establish their own household, and when they have children, they would teach their children. That's what they would do, right? The man is the head of a household. You see that with Adam. Adam could have nipped, like I said the last lesson, he could have nipped all that nipped that in the bud if he would have dealt with Eve's foolishness at that moment, right? But he went along with it. See, man can't go along. You cannot follow. You have to be the lead. And that comes with responsibility. And that's what a lot of men don't want to do. And then when women try to do it all, then if something's lacking, then men have a problem, but you're not doing your job. We should look internally first before we start critiquing somebody else. This is verse 7. It says, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. You see a lot of others talking about, man, these women going into these churches and it's bogus. You're right. You're absolutely right. They're going to these false churches, and that false minister becomes, they have a relationship with he ain't man. But understand, brothers and sisters, the man as a whole, like I'm talking about so-called Negro, we the people of the book, we are absent. We have been absent for a variety of reasons, and in a variety of ways, we have been absent from our households. And so we need to be, so if you're the spiritual head of your house and leading your house and understanding this law of God, you shouldn't allow, how you would let a man stand up there and say that you don't have to keep the law. Do that make, if you think about that, the Bible's telling you, right? See, as a husband and a man and father, you should want to be the spiritual head. That's your job. Now, that means you have to learn about the law of God so you can teach, you can lead your family in a way in which they should go. So you wouldn't lead them if you knew the book. You wouldn't allow your family to be led by a man who is teaching that you don't have to keep the law, which is what these ministers are teaching, that you don't have to keep the commandments of God. Therefore, if you don't keep the commandments of God, you have absolutely no standard of righteousness. Righteousness is not based or predicated upon somebody's opinion. It's based upon the law, statutes, the commandments, the judgments of God. Because otherwise, it's whatever you say it is. And if that's the case, we have a problem, because there could be no set standard, and it can change. See, that's not okay. That's why you have ministers, many of them, saying that homosexuality is okay because they have done away with God's law. They say you don't have to keep the law. But the Bible says you're not only supposed to keep the law, you're supposed to teach it to your sons. That's in the law. That's what you're supposed to do. And it's not, you're supposed to talk about the law of God all the time. Why? So you can instill righteousness in your children. It says train them up in the way in which they should go. What are you training them up with? Are we talking chemistry? What are you training them up with? Are you teaching them the U.S. Constitution? I mean, what are you training them with? You're using the manual of living, which is the Bible. That's what you're training them up with. And you showing them the righteous way, the path of righteousness, that straight gate, so that they can get into the kingdom, so that they can live a righteous life, brothers and sisters. That's what you're supposed to do. Let's see what else you're supposed to do. Let's go back to Proverbs. See, a lot of this is on the men. And we've been lacking, woefully lacking. This is Proverbs 13 and verse 24. Proverbs 13 and verse 24. It says, he that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. So it says, he that hateth or spareth his rod hateth his son. Whatever the world has to tell you today about corporal punishment, listen, the Bible says there are times when you need corporal punishment. And it says, he that spareth his rod, meaning if you don't, and understand, this is not talking about arbitrarily physically disciplining children, nor is it talking about abuse. But it is talking about corporal punishment. There are times when you need corporal punishment. And the man is or should be the disciplinarian. Okay? And we're going to read a little bit more about that. But just like, for instance, today I was shopping today. And I saw a little child. His mother told him about 6 times to sit down. Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down. Man, I'd have told that kid one time, and if he didn't sit down, he had a problem. And then the next time we was in there, you know what would happen? He would act like he had some sense. Because that little boy, you could tell, he looked at his mother, it was a game. He laughing at her. There's no fear of her. See, that's one thing about my father. I feared my father. My father wasn't even a disciplinarian, but I knew if it ever came to that, he would crush me. So I didn't even go there. Because I understood, it's just something, and you're more likely with men. Because a lot of times, you know, people say, well, it's my mother. Yeah, well, trust me, if you look back in the old days and you see what it was all about, you might have had a mother. Yeah, the mother was doing, you know, some of the discipline or a lot of the discipline. But she ain't no fear like the fear of a father. I'm here to tell you. You look at your mother, by the time you 12, 13 years old, you're not even afraid of your mother anymore. I was looking at that little boy. That boy was about 5 years old. He was like, you looking at like you a joke. But here it says, he that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. Early, around that boy's age. So he won't be acting a fool. Because see, people talk about what you can't do and what's abuse. See, this is not me advocating in any way, shape, or form abuse of children, but corporal punishment is necessary. And appropriate corporal punishment is necessary for some children under certain circumstances. For example, if your child is that age, about that 5 or 4 years old, and they're going to the stove and they turning on the stove, or they got some scissors and they headed to the electrical socket, you need to put a strong message in their mind early that that's not what you need to do. Why? Because it saves their life. See, if you correct bad behavior at a young age, when they're old, say they won't depart from the right way, more than likely they won't engage in activities and behavior that will get them truly abused by these police who have no problem in beating our sons. So you got society telling us not to discipline our children physically with physical discipline, but they go in the streets, and when they engage in inappropriate behavior, we want to cry at the press conference. We want to weep at the press conference. and I'm not justifying these crooked cops, but what I am saying is this: we should have upright behavior amongst our children. And who is the best to do that? It is men. You talk about the gang problem in Chicago, for example, it's all over. Ain't nowhere in the world you gonna tell me that all these men or these young men out here that they have fathers in the home. They don't. Because I'm telling you, I got sons that my sons ain't nowhere in the world. There's nowhere in the world I'm allowing my sons to go out robbing people, killing people, acting a fool. That's not happening. That's not happening. Now, granted, you're gonna have some that you can do whatever you know, do everything right, and they just a bad seed, so to speak, and they just gonna go off the rails. But for the most part, brothers and sisters, you train up a child in which way in which they should go from an early age, and they stay on that path. You got to think about it. These kids don't come out the womb shooting people. They don't come out the womb shooting people. These girls don't come out the womb and say, you know what, I think I want to hit the stripper pole. I'm just keeping it plain with you. They don't do that. They build up to that. That not no father being there, that boy start to acting a fool in school, cussing out grown folks, stealing bikes. Now he's smoking weed. Now he's selling weed. He been in juvie a couple of times. Now he doing all kind of stuff. Next thing you know, he's shooting people. It's a progress. That bad behavior, you need to nip it in the bud. Disrespect, you need. How you a man that, listen, you think about disrespecting of how these men disrespect, these young boys disrespect their mothers. A man ain't gonna allow, a true father not gonna allow you to disrespect his wife. A true father is not gonna allow you to go out into society and act a fool. He's not gonna allow it. He's gonna set an example. And if you look at our young males, you know that there's no example there. And you look at our women are lost. A lot of these young girls are lost. They looking for love from their father in these males that are not men. Then they don't know how to be men because they didn't have fathers. So they're engaging in all kind of illicit sexual behavior with these males because they don't have a father to tell them that's going to take care of them, that's going to love them, and show them an example, a true example of what a husband should be, so they should know what to look for when they go out into this world. But they're not even looking to be married. They're not even, by the time they're 25 years old, and keep it plain with you, they got so many men they done been with, it's unreal. It's unreal. 3, 4 baby, no husband in sight. See, you got to ask yourself the question, is that the best thing for us? Or does that breed immoral behavior and poverty? There is a direct correlation between poverty, imprisonment, and fatherlessness, illiteracy, all these things. See, men have a great role that they are failing at. And how do you know what to teach your children? Yes, it's teaching. You need to teach them about, especially men, you teach their sons, yes, how to go out and make money and do those things of what they need to do, and put that pressure on them and not baby them when they don't need to be babied. See, the mother and father bring balance. Not saying that a man can't be nurturing, but the vast majority of that nurturing you get from your mother, which makes sense. But sometimes you don't need to be nurtured. Sometimes you need to be put in a pressure cooker. Sometimes you need somebody with their foot in your butt, quite frankly, to get your act together. And that's more, a man is more conducive to that. And a lot of times men don't have to do all that yelling. All that acting out, acting crazy, making a scene. Man ain't got to do that. Deal with you one time and you know. You already know. I mean, you even see that amongst animals. Animals will discipline their young because they're trying to save their life, because it's a jungle out here. It's a jungle out here. And our boys in particular our boys do not have the luxury of making the same mistakes as other nations. Is it fair? No. But we can't be concerned with that. What we need, not saying you shouldn't speak out against it and fight that. What I'm saying is the first thing we need to do is get our houses together. Get our houses in order. That's what we need to do. That's what we need to do, and be the epitome of righteousness. That's what we need to do. And establish a culture in which we value marriage. Forget what the world is doing. The world on their way to hell. Let's go to Proverbs the 19th. Proverbs the 19th chapter. Proverbs 19 and verse 18. See, this is not just one time you see this in the Bible. Proverbs 19 and verse 18. It says, chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crime. You know how they used to say in the old days, it's going to hurt me more than it hurts you. It's going to hurt me more than it hurts you. You know, ultimately, it's about looking past that moment. Because that is ultimately it's about looking past that moment into the future. And what will happen to a child? I see young people all the time. If only they had a father who dealt with their foolishness early, they wouldn't do the things that they do. They simply would not do the things that they are doing. And they would make their lives easier, brothers and sisters. That's what it's about. This is Proverbs the 23rd chapter. Proverbs the 23rd chapter. It says, well, hold not correction from the child. It said, for if thou beatest him with a rod, he shall not die. You saving his life. That little pain, that little discipline can save his life in the future. That's why you hear older people say, man, yeah, my mother did, or my parents did this. They disciplined me. My father did this. But you know what? It helped me because I need it. And understand, all kids are not the same. They're not cookie cutters. Some children, you could just, quite frankly, you could just talk to. But other children, that talking don't mean nothing. You got to show them. And another thing, one thing I cannot stand. Yeah, I see this. You see this a lot, and I'm not saying males don't do it too, but I've seen this, I don't know, quite a few times, just out in public, where you have women, mothers, cussing out children, right? Degrading children. You're not supposed to do that. Well, the first thing as far as rearing children, you need to train them first. Why? You know, I'm not talking about when it's immediate danger, where you got a little one that can't understand, right? They can't understand that you're not supposed to touch the stove, right? They can't understand. You might have to pop that hand. You know, pop that, you know, that behind. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about somebody that understands, that could comprehend. And that could be early. You know, they start to comprehend. How is it that you don't teach them anything, but you discipline them and you making the scene? You making the scene. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do. Wait, you know, you gonna talk about killing a child. You know, that's hyperbole, but still, you talking all this stuff. I guarantee you haven't taught them anything. You haven't taught them what they should do. Verse 15 says, or verse 13 says, well, hold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with a rod, he shall not die. Thou shalt beat him with a rod and shall deliver his soul from hell. So you're going to deliver him from a lot of pain and heartache. But you have to, like I said, nip it in the bud. You got to deal with that beat times when he is early. But let's go to Hebrews. And just to put this in perspective, the 12th chapter, Hebrews the 12th chapter, and we're going to pick it up at verse 5. Hebrews 12 and verse 5. Now here it says something here. We should really think about this. It says in Hebrews 12 and 5, And ye have forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. It says, my son, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. So when the Lord chastises his children, which it can be adults, it says, hey, don't despise it. Because ultimately, brothers and sisters, the rebuke, if the Lord is rebuking you, that could be good because it'll correct your behavior, right? To keep you from the lake of fire. So that's the same thing we should do as men with our children to prevent them from being in a hellish condition. Again, they don't come out the womb picking up a gun. Now, some things that happen prior to that. They don't come out the womb trying to walk the street corners. They don't walk out the womb and start crawling towards prison. Right? It says, in verse 5 again, it says, ye have forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. It says this, for whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth. So the Lord will chastise you in your life if he loves you. Just like a boy, you got to think about it. First of all, anytime you chastising a child, that's friction. That's friction. That's conflict. Me personally, I'm not a person that argues. I'm not a person that looks for conflict. But I understand you cannot be comfortable in every situation. Sometimes conflict and friction is necessary when somebody's out of pocket. So, like for a man, a husband, if you the spiritual head of your household, you should understand something. Sometimes, at first of all, number one, you have to be in this book and understand how you're supposed to walk. And try to the best of your ability to lead that house properly. And correct whoever in the house, whether it be wife, whether it be children. You don't want to hear that, but that's true. That's the truth. What did Job say? Thou speakest as a foolish woman speaketh, when she said, curse God and die. But one thing about Job, though, he was a righteous man. He was entreating. Matter of fact, hold your finger here. And just to show you the mindset of Job. This is Job, the 1st chapter. And he had a lot of kids. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. This is Job 1 and 1. It says, there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man was perfect and upright and one that feared God and eschewed evil. So he feared God, he reverenced God, and he hated evil. It says, and there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. So he knows something about being a parent. You got 10 kids. Then it said his substance also was 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke, and oxen, and 500 she-asses in a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the men in the east. He says, and his sons went and feasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. And it was so when the days of their feasting were gone about that, listen to what Job did, that Job sent and sanctified them and rose up early in the morning and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, listen to this, it may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. Job, he made sacrifice for his kids just in case they curse God in their mind. So that tells you what kind of mindset he had. Right? He was following the Lord. So now in Hebrews 12 and verse 7, it says, concerning chastening, it says, if ye endure chastening, God dealeth with you as with sons. Right? God will chastise you, but now you telling people they can't chastise their children, right? It says, for what son is he whom the father chasteneth not? How you a son if he don't chastise you? Verse 8, but if ye be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, then are ye bastards. and not sons. Bastards like somebody don't know who their father is, right? Now, and he said that's how you don't get chastised, because if you got a son, that's part of loving your son. It's not just buying him everything he wants. It's chastening him, right? And making him into a man, or just not just any man, but a righteous man, righteous dog, right? That's what you want. That's what you have to have. Let's go to Colossians 3, because one thing about chastising the child, you have to do it in a certain way. Like I said earlier, it's not just arbitrary. So it says Colossians 3 and verse 21, it says, fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. See, you shouldn't be chastising your children just out of anger, right? So yeah, so really we have to put these things together. First thing you need to do is you need to understand, you need to teach the child. You need to teach them and instruct them in morality, which is done through the instruction of the Torah. Okay? And so you training your child, and then you disciplining the child when necessary. But one thing you're not doing is you're not disciplining them out of anger. Let's go to Ephesians, the 6th chapter, Ephesians 6 and verse 4. Ephesians, you're not just doing that. Ephesians 6 and verse 4, here Paul writes, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, right? You are not to abuse your child. You're not supposed to just, again, discipline them for arbitrarily or out of anger. Rather, you should do it in an appropriate way. Let's go to Genesis 18. Genesis 18, because ultimately you want a specific type of household. Genesis 18, and we're going to look at the example of Abraham. Genesis 18. Genesis 18. See, you're the one that's determining which way your household is to go. That's on the man. And I'm quite frankly sick of hearing what women ain't doing. What we doing? I'm tired of hearing that. I'm tired of hearing black woman ain't. I'm tired of hearing that. Because whatever she is our fault. Whatever she ain't is our fault. Genesis 18 and verse 19. And this is what verse 17. This says, and the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Because he was going to bring forth this seed, right, from Abraham. He says, shall I hide that thing which I do? It says in verse 18, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. And he knows something about Abraham. It says, for I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him. So it's not just his children, it's everybody in that house. A lot of times you got brothers scared of their wife. They scared of their wife. I forgot what president it was. It might have been Lincoln or either Johnson, one of the two. That said Lyndon B. Johnson, not Andrew Johnson. But I think it was Lyndon B. Johnson or Abraham. I can't remember which one, who said, something to the effect of like, a wife is the only person he fitted. He basically can't physically, I paraphrase, can't physically do anything to him, but he's scared. And the thing he's scared about, it's implied there, you can infer that, hey, a woman has a way of making your life hell. But see, what you need to understand, so you won't want to have any conflict, but what you need to understand is the one you need to fear is God. That's what if you in that, that's what a man need to understand. So you need to walk according to and be directed according to what thus saith the Lord. That's what you need to be. That's what you need to. That's what you need to fear. Not a woman, not her saying anything, not her doing anything. Because but they scared. They literally scared. They why you see a man chip down. Because a woman, she would chip down this man. She would mold and shape a man, and she shape him in a way in which she sees certain things in him. She can run him. She would manipulate him, right? She would talk soft to him at certain times when she wants something. Or she just spaz out. Listen, do what thus says the Lord and be led by what's right. Take care of your family. Be a righteous man, and you ain't got to worry. Whatever she do, it'll take care of itself. Do what you're supposed to do. Do what you are supposed to do. So it says in verse 19, the Lord said, for I know him that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord. Train them up in the way in which they should go when they're old, they're not depart from it. That's the children, again, the whole household. What did Jacob say? Put away your false gods out of our money. Put away that mess. Right? We going this way. Y'all follow. And that's a lot of responsibility. But that's what men are called to do. So it says, for I know him that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. Right? So his household was blessed. Why was his household blessed? Because he was leading them in the right direction. And that has nothing to do with being that's not being a tyrant. Let's go to Joshua. I want to show you something real quick. Joshua, the 7th chapter. Because here, this is in Joshua, the 7th chapter, where Israel, basically, one of the Israelites, Achan, he disobeyed God and took something that he shouldn't have took, right? And so, because as a result, Israel was losing in war. And then Joshua was entreating to the Lord. He said, listen, why are you looking at me? Listen, I'm telling you out of pocket. He told them what had happened. So they found out who it was. It was this Achan. And let's find out what happened to his household. Since he decided to disobey God, let's find out what happened to his household. So it says in verse 22 of Joshua 7, so Joshua sent messengers, and they ran into the tent. And behold, it was hid in this tent, and the silver under it. Right? Because he took some things that he should have done. In verse 20, it says, and Achan answered Joshua and said, I indeed have sinned against the Lord, God of Israel, and thus have I done. When I saw among the spoils of goodly Babylonian garment and 200 shekels of silver and the wares of gold of 50 shekels weight, then I coveted them and took them, and behold, they are hid in the earth in the midst of my tent, and the silver under it. So he wasn't supposed to take it, right? And he did it. So the Lord was dealing with Israel for that. And let's see what happens to him. Verse 25. It says, and Joshua said, why hast thou troubled us? The Lord shall trouble thee this day. And all Israel's, verse 24. It says, and Joshua and all Israel, listen to what they did. It says, Joshua and Israel with him took Achan, the son of Zerah, and the silver, and the garment, and the wares of gold, and his sons, and his daughters, and his oxen, and his asses, and his sheep, and his tent, and all that he had, and they brought them unto the valley of Achor. See, say, well, I took his kid. Listen. Now, whether they knew it or I can't say what his children knew or what age they were. But my point is this: this man's household is destroyed because of his actions. Okay, let me read it. Let me just read that to you. It says in verse 25, and Joshua said, why hast thou troubled us? The Lord shall trouble thee this day. And all Israel stoned them with stones and burned them with fire after they had stoned them with stones. Then it says, and they raised over him a great heap of stones unto this day. So the Lord turned from the fierceness of his anger, wherefore the name of that place is called the Valley of Achor unto this day. See, understand, he brought destruction. This man brought destruction upon his whole family. He brought destruction upon his whole family. It's just like when you have a man that's absent, leaving people unreared, right? To fend for themselves, to wife, and a mother to fend for herself, or he does something that's detrimental to that family. Those kids have to deal with the consequences. We are the destroyed nation right now because our forefathers didn't do what they were supposed to do. See? So what you do as a man can have grave consequences on your seed, on your family. Absolutely. Here was the destruction of them. You got many of our families destroyed because, again, because the man is not there, or because, which is a decision, or he's making other bad decisions. Last place. This is Joshua, the 24th chapter. Joshua 24, and we're done. Joshua 24 and verse 14. So here he gives Joshua gives Israel a charge on what they should do. It says in Joshua 24 and 14, it says, "Now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your father served on the other side of the flood and in Egypt, and serve you the Lord." So he said, you serve God in sincerity and truth, and the Bible tells you that his word is true, his laws, commandments, that's the truth. Then it says, he said, put away the gods which your father served on the other side of the flood, on the other side of the Euphrates River. You know, because that's where they were at in Mesopotamia and Babylon, like Ur of the Chaldees, all that false worship. Abraham was called out of that. But that's what the people in that area, that's what they were dealing with, falsehood. So it says, and in Egypt. So they was worshiping falsely in Egypt, in that Egyptian bondage. And it says, and serve you the Lord, serve the true and living God. Right? He says, and if they seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your father served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods in the Amorites in whose land we dwell. Right? Who are you going to serve? You going to serve those false gods in the old land, or you going to serve these false gods in the land of Canaan? He says something there. It said, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. He made a decision. It don't seem like he asked his wife, what should we do? He didn't ask, it don't seem like he asked his kid. He basically said what we about to do. We're going to serve the Lord. And that's what men need to do. We need to make sure that our whole households are serving the Lord. With that, brothers and sisters, this is always my prayer that you will edify.